Hey guys, welcome back to the Female Athlete Inner Circle. This might be playing on the Women's Basketball Summit, but also we are hosting a live event on Sunday, August 12th, a female sports performance workshop up in Kennebunk, Maine. So today I wanted to speak with one of the speakers that's speaking on this live event. We are going to be talking about the ACL with female athletes. So Noah, welcome to the call, my friend.
Thanks, Jim. It's great to be here.
So for everyone listening, that has never heard of you, doesn't know you, let's tell everyone about your bio and your background.
Well, I come to this as a physical therapist. I've worked for almost about 10 years in the field of orthopedic rehabilitation. And then increasingly over the last year or two, I've ventured into the strength and conditioning part of the spectrum. And then now I'm presently doing a practice where I meld a little bit of the two, so working a little bit with people on rehabilitation and working a little bit with people on high-end performance.
Nice. One of the reasons I'm excited to have you on the call is, yes, you're a physical therapist, you deal with ACLs, but you also have the kind of the strength and conditioning background, and you are big into kettlebells, and I'm a huge supporter of kettlebells. So like I said, I'm very happy to have you on the call. So you will be talking about the ACL at our live workshop on August 12th. So just for just kind of to start this, what are you going to be talking about for our workshop on August 12th?
It's going to be a general overview as to what's the state of how prevalent ACL tears in the United States population, and how prevalent they are in particular in the female athlete. And then discussing what are some risk factors that we know cause non-contact ACL injuries, because if it's a contact sport, injuries are going to happen. That's just kind of what you signed up for. However, there's a very high prevalence of non-contact ACL injuries, and we know that although we can't prevent all of them, a lot of them are preventable. And so it's discussing a lot of that, and then how maybe the strength coach or the sport coach themselves can be aware of this and then integrate it into what they're doing with their athletes.
Nice. And Noah will be doing a lecture and hands-on, so that will be some great information. So before we get in kind of the non-contact injuries and what we as strength coaches can do to help prevent these, talk about like what the ACL is and why females are at a higher risk for ACL injuries.
So the ACL is one of the four major ligaments in the knee. You have two on the outside, and they would be your MCL and your LCL. And then you have two on the inside, the internal part of the knee. You have your ACL and your PCL, and they kind of crisscross. And the ACL is the ligament that prevents the tibia, the bottom part of the knee, from translating forward. And the way in which that gets blown through or injured is two ways. One, you can hyperextend your knee and boom, it gets blown through. And the more common way is your knee buckles inward with your foot going out. And just a way of people may try to hold themselves steady, and they are successful, but they blow through their ACL in the process.
Nice. So we know that females are 9 times more likely to tear their ACL. Some risk factors we can help with, and then there's some we can't. So let's go into like kind of like some why females are more likely to tear their ACL with stuff we can't change, like kind of the hips, menstrual cycle, and then we'll kind of touch on what we can change.
Yeah. So in terms of risk factors in general for ACL injuries is one, simply playing a sport that requires you to jump, that requires you to land, that requires you to do direction changes. So regardless of gender, if you play those sports, you're at a higher risk of an ACL injury. Fatigue is a higher risk. So if you're not as conditioned as you need to, or you're burning your candle at both ends, that's a higher risk. In females in general, there are some things that we can change, such as the fact that the female pelvis is broader and has a different architecture that is there in order to give them childbearing potential, but it makes it so that it's a harder leverage on some of the hip muscles, and they're at a higher likelihood of some fatigue happening, some poor timing happening, and as a result, that knee buckling inward. So that architecture is something that we can't change. Another thing that we can't change is that it's very common in females for the notch where the ACL passes through on the femur to be a little bit more narrow. And all that does is make it so that as you maybe twist your knee back and forth, the ACL is less tolerant to that wrenching and it can snap a little bit more easily. So, females are maybe going to be a little bit more wibbly wobbly. It's not guaranteed, but there's just these factors, and the ACL is going to give a little bit more easily. Now, what we can change is their mechanics. What we can change is their conditioning. All of us are going to have our knees buckle inward if our brain thinks we're going to fall or we're really fatigued. Your brain doesn't give a crap about anything other than don't smash your face. So we're going to stay steady. And if your conditioning does not allow you to last during your event or during as competitive as you'd like to be in your event, then you're going to make it happen and you might end up sacrificing your ACL in the process. So those are things that we can change. And the strength coach could be aware of what ideal mechanics are and prioritize that. So that's where good conditioning, in terms of good form, in terms of prioritizing only pushing people to the point where they are maintaining good form, and at the same time, good conditioning requires good recovery. And I suppose with that, I suppose it's a little bit of a tangent, but it's something that I'll oftentimes see in some professional teams, not professional teams, but collegiate teams, some of these traveling teams, is they're burning their candles at both ends. They'll be doing double, triple sessions. The players are fatigued. And those are times at which either during weekend tournaments or during double or triple sessions at the beginning of the season that we'll see a high incidence of these kind of injuries. And it's completely preventable simply because the players are exhausted, and the priority is at times more trying to create a team that's aggressive, and some people that are maybe at risk factors that are getting injured.
So let's talk about that a little more. So like early sports specification, like it's insane right now. We have 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, and all they're doing, is playing basketball year round. Right now, kind of it's the heart of AAU season. The girls basketball, like 2 weeks ago, they were at 2 tournaments back to back. They're in DC right now for, every college coach to see them, and then they go right to Atlanta. So basically they're going into August, and they probably have half of August off, and they're thrown right into preseason basketball. So I'm just curious to hear more of your thoughts about why kids shouldn't be playing one sport constantly, why it's important to kind of play a couple sports, take some rest and recover, and how that plays into the ACL.
I think it's, at this point, it's more a lot of us in the field just anecdotally will observe that the 3-season athlete crushes it very successfully over time, and that the ones that specialize earlier and earlier, particularly in our culture, they burn out or injure out more and more. There's a bit of an issue, probably increasingly in our culture, of just a lack of general athleticism. So, maybe our parents or our grandparents, they were working on a farm, they were riding their bike, they were running around, they had very physical play, and they had very physical lives. So they have this underlying general athleticism that we just don't, and in particular the younger generations more so, doesn't have. And then if you combine that lack of general athleticism with very specialized athleticism, you get a very weird human being that maybe is very talented at the specifics of their sport, but they lack some resilience. And so I don't know that there is much published now. There's some stuff out there in terms of like baseball and some sports with early specialization with increased incidence of injuries. But all of us in the field are just sitting there nodding our head as to specialize as late as you can. There's a certain level of people are more successful when they take a month off, when they simply enjoy either being a kid or just generally active. They maybe focus on some general strength training, but it's not competitive. It is as good for the brain as it is for the body. And unfortunately, it's really gotten out of control.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an understatement. And I think people are aware that it's gotten out of control, but the question lies, what to do with it, because people are nervous that if they miss a tournament if they're not playing their sport season, year round,
Yeah.
someone's going to get better than them. A college coach is going to see them more. And, trying to just, with what these interviews and what we're putting on live workshop summits, is just trying to educate them that that's not the case. We want these kids to peak in college, or possibly the pros if they're going to go, which is probably less than 1%. We want them to peak in college. And if they're playing in the wear and tear on their body, they're going to burn out in high school, which is exactly what we don't want. So we've talked a little bit about kind of what we can't change. Let's talk about what we can change. I think, taking some rest and recovery is one of those things, trying to be a multi-sport athlete, at a younger age. And then I find with my female athletes, especially my basketball players, I don't know what you see with your females. Do you have a hard time convincing them that they need to strength train, they need to do sports performance training, or are they bought into, doing that and why they should be doing that?
I think the way that I interact with them is either going to be that they have an injury, so I will simply forcefully tell them this is what they have to do, and the parent, if it's a child or minor, or if they're either coming to me for the strength and conditioning. So I'm at a point where, or at a interaction with them where it's sort of like, this is what you have to do to get out of this injury, and you have to keep it. I think that, I don't know that it's necessarily, I would say, I don't know that if it's, I haven't seen that it's specific to females, but I have seen that there's a culture that by and large doesn't think that you have to prioritize the strength and conditioning. They know that they need to. And I think that's the parents and the coaches just as much as the players. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, with these summits, these workshops, my job is I am trying to get, from a physical therapist perspective, a strength coach who sees females that are injured. We've had strength coaches on, university, UConn women's basketball, probably the best team in the country. We have South Carolina strength coach and they keep reiterating, these girls need to strength train, because when they come to play college, which I'm guessing probably if you're playing a club sport or AAU, your goal is to play at the next level, and they're just repeating, we strength train. We need you to strength train.
Right.
But also, I think the research shows that for females especially, I think if you have a year of strength training under your belt, I think you're 60 to 80% less likely to tear your ACL. To me, that's a no-brainer why these females should absolutely be doing strength training.
Yeah, and it's just whether that information is getting to the right people, the people that are influencing those younger females. And that unfortunately usually comes down to the coach and the parent, that this information needs to be accepted and valued probably by the coach and by the parent. And if you're a certain chunk of your employment, it's something that I heard stated and really stuck with me in the last couple of years, was that if your employment is as a traveling coach for some of these teams, and then if you begin to be bombarded with some of these suggestions or statistics that this kind of year-long season or this intensive season is not good, that creates an internal conflict. So I think there's a cultural change that needs to happen with these young female athletes support structure. The people that are transporting them, the people that are encouraging, the people that are pushing them to go to these weekend tournaments, these very long seasons. So I see it, just because as I would rehabilitate people who had ACL injuries and were looking to get back, I would have to manage the parents and occasionally the coaches just as much as the patient.
Nice. That's well said, and some great information. So, like I said, you're a physical therapist and a strength coach. So what, your advice, your expertise, what should females be doing for their strength training to kind of prevent that non-contact ACL injury?
Pretty much at first, the basics. So number one, the basics. Basic weight training. Squat, deadlift, or kettlebell swing, same thing. They should push, they should pull, they should work out like they're on a farm. So number one, they should do some sort of general strength training. Number two, in terms of for preventing a a lower half injury, whether it's ankle sprains or whether it's an ACL tear like we're talking about, they need to do some single leg work. So they need to make sure that they're just as strong and steady on one leg as they may be on two legs with doing some of that stuff. So they need to be doing some lunging, they need to be doing some single leg squats. Now with that, they also need to be doing some lateral work. Oftentimes we'll see some great strength and conditioning programs that are just training powerlifters. They're not training athletes. And so they need to make sure that they're moving laterally. They need to make sure that they're reaching their leg, their opposite leg, their arms in different directions, because that is athleticism. And in particular in these cutting sports, that's what's required, is for them to be able to move side to side, full body. It's not simply doing lunges straight up and down. They need to train as an athlete. So number one, the basics. Exercise like you're on a farm. Number two, do some stuff on one leg. And number three, you got to move side to side, and you got to consider what your full body is doing.
Nice. That's very nice. I 100% agree with that. So you mentioned doing single leg work because of kind of ankle mobility. So I'm kind of throwing this question out as we were just chatting. What do you think ankle mobility, because especially the game of basketball, people are taping their ankles, they're wearing those ankle braces. How much do you think the lack of ankle mobility is playing into knee injuries, because the ankle's just not moving when we're trying to plant and have the body kind of absorb the force?
Well, so a lack of ankle mobility can be because of a previous injury, so a previous ankle sprain that wasn't fully rehabilitated. Or in cases where that hasn't happened, a lack of ankle mobility is just due to a lack of quality athleticism north. So tight ankles is just like a fever. It's just a symptom. So these people aren't able to keep their feet on the ground, shift their body around, and then their ankles just get really tight. So stretching an ankle is, yes, going to give them more ankle mobility, but they got to learn how to use that. And so they got to learn how to use that increased dorsiflexion and lunge, cut in a bunch of different directions and make it look good and make it look strong.
Nice. Thank you for that question on you. So we've touched a lot of basic, like what's the ACL, what we can change, what we can't change, your recommendations of strength training, what they should be doing. As we wrap up this call, is there anything else you want to touch on about the ACL and kind of the injuries with the female athletes?
Yeah, I think the big thing is that it's an injury that even though we can repair the ligament itself, it's an injury that really needs to be respected, because if you look at the statistics of the long-term outcomes of these folks that have ACL repairs, about 80% of them are going to have early onset arthritis in that knee, and about 20% of them, 1 in 5, are going to have a re-injury within the first 2 years after their ACL repair. So even though our rehabilitation, our surgical procedures have really come along in the last 20 to 30 years, this is still a very serious injury that interferes with present athletic goals, but also interferes later on in terms of a person being an active individual. So prevention is key with this. It's something that really needs to be taken seriously. And I just hope that everyone involved in helping these young female athletes reach their goals looks at them as a lifelong athlete, not just some maybe current goals that are very important, but look at it as a sports, with a tangent, looking at sports as a means of developing an adult, as opposed to just some getting to college and playing for a D1 team.
That's probably, I think, everything we talked about today is probably what you just said about kind of the long-term effects on these young females is probably the most important thing. So I really appreciate you saying that. So if people want to learn more about you, your practice up in Portland, Maine, where can they find you? Instagram, website, what do you got?
So I'm on Instagram and Facebook. You can just simply Google Noah Harrison, DPT. My practice is called Portland Integrative Physical Therapy. You could Google either one of those, and you could reach out to me if you have any sort of questions. I'm pretty regularly putting out stuff on Instagram about some of the things that we talked about. It's about strength training, about different ways of doing it, about moving laterally, about considering the full body in your conditioning programs. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to field them. Don't hesitate to reach out.
And what's your email in case they want to reach out to you?
Best way to reach me would be noah@portlandintegrativept.com. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it works. But that would be the best way to reach me, or you can reach me on Instagram or Facebook. Either way, it all goes in the same place.
Awesome. Well, Noah, I look forward to presenting with you up in Maine in August, and we will connect again and chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great speaking with you.